on this week's episode of Tides of Lore. Dang, we literally have a serial killer in Darnassus.
So he wants to come crawling back.
You note how did as all Brave Gildanes do so well, skulked away and hid till the battle was over.
You guys are brutal, man.
Maybe using that dad strength on your 13-year-old isn't the best play.
Hey, you want to see a dead body?
You're coming to war, brother. Congrats, you've been drafted.
I mean, he does so well with Anduin, right?
1 HP'd it all the way.
Well, good guy.
Remind him of who he is and perhaps who he can become. Every episode of Tides of Lore is made possible by our amazing supporters. Thank you so much to Xander Harris, Jake Hilpert, Brock Penrod, The Away Fan, Insulin FTW, Bubba BSE, Arez Jerry, Watto21, and Mo. Your guys' support truly means the world to us, and if you guys would like to join the tide, check us out on YouTube or Patreon. Hello everybody and welcome back to the 46th episode of Tides of Lore. My name is Robert Silva. I am one half of your host team, joined as always by the greatest paladin to have ever existed. He single-handedly arm wrestled Tyrion into submission. He out-debated Uther, and he is now here today to listen to a story about the Wolfheart novel. How you doing, Tim?
I did not die to a random demon. I'm good. I came back from a work trip that was, put us through a lot. We're recording on an abnormal day once again. But we're doing it. We're doing it for the people. We're here, of course. Played hardcore last night. That was fun. Apparently, with Nax Ramus coming out, there's these necropolises floating. Dude, I flew past Ironforge. There's a necropolis floating in front of Ironforge, and then it spawns undead, but they're the level of the zone. So luckily, I ran past.
Okay, I was just brutal 60 elites popping up.
No, it's not that bad. So, but still pretty terrifying. But apparently, there's also some new bosses in some dungeons. I did Graveyard last night. Going totally fine. We kill the last boss. We come back out to the main courtyard, the graveyard part, and there's a new boss roaming. And apparently, he does 1,000 frostbolts, 1,000 damage frostbolts. My group accidentally pulled more mobs, and 2 people died in the hardcore. Yeah, so that was interesting. But I did not. So, life goes on.
As if, Tim says.
Yeah.
Simply could not be me. Did you have to bubble or anything?
I should have bopped my friends. I probably could have prevented it. I probably could have prevented a death.
Well, you needed that bop for you.
Well,
in case he turned his aggression towards you.
I didn't use it. No bop. No, I could have laid on hand someone. I froze, man. I didn't know what was happening. It was just, it all happened so fast. I wasn't the one who pulled. We reviewed the footage. Bubba and I came to the conclusion that it was not my fault, even though I was the tank, because I was not the one who pulled or did any of the people who died probably deserve. But yeah, that's what I did.
If not this instance, another. I mean, it's only been 3 days since we recorded the last episode. So yeah, another atypical day. I haven't gotten into too much in that time span, but you did go on your work trip. I ended up spending most of that time just hanging out with my fiance and watching some TV series and stuff like that. I watched the 2nd season of Apothecary Diaries, which is an anime that Tim will never watch in his life. But that was fun. Outside of that, we launched the first episode of Seaside Reply, which is where we're moving the bulk of our comment replies over to a Patreon stream that will be accessible to all Patreon members, including free ones. So if you want to check out more comment review sort of content, we now we highlight one per episode, each of us now, but if you want to see me go through basically all of the past week's content and look over that, as well as we had some people coming in yesterday. We were talking about some other games. We ended up watching some old trailers, some mod trailers for some older games and stuff like that, and just kind of hanging out, having a good discussion. So if you want to do that with us, or with me at the very least, come hang out. It's probably going to be on Fridays most days. I think it's probably going to be Fridays, but we're aiming for just the weekend in general. So check out Seaside Reply. And outside of that, I literally haven't touched my hardcore character. Bubba Kiss who is my ever-present guardian, was not so ever-present this weekend. The horrors of the Barrens. They scare just a measly Tauren warrior such as myself.
Oh, I fully enchanted your gear. You're Chad. You should send it.
I know, I should send it, but I also didn't want to, like, outlevel him. I have been enjoying playing alongside of him, so. But he's been able to get on more lately. He's handled his life stuff, so hopefully Wailing Caverns tonight. But yeah, that's mostly what's been up with me. I have really not been up to much. It's been a busy week. It's going to continue to be busy weeks. You'll probably hear very little fascinating stuff from me. But with that thrilling confirmation of what I've been up to, we can move on to what we discussed last week, which was we began talking about the Wolfheart novel. And most of that revolves around the Night Elves kind of setting up the summit for the Alliance, and the Horde beginning kind of a excursion, or not even excursion, more like a full-on assault and operation within Ashenvale, collecting lumber and attacking Night Elven outposts. What do you remember about last episode, Tim?
Well, our favorite race,
yep.
the Worgen, they were finally getting inducted into the Alliance. Genn's not their leader, right? Or is he?
He is.
Okay. I thought someone else took over for a little bit.
No, Darius Crowley leads another group of Warrior over in Gilneas still, but no, he's still technically leader. And literally leader, as you'll see this episode.
I remember talking a little bit about Maiev. What was her role?
I totally forgot. We also saw the return of Jared Shadowsong to the story after he's been gone for probably at least like 9,000 years or something like that. It's been a very, very long time since we've seen him, since the War of the Ancients, really. And yeah, he's brother to Maiev. Eventually, Jared, shows up with his dying wife. She dies. He's super sad about that. He catches up with Maiev, who is ever the loving sister, and shows him nothing but compassion in his time of need. Not really. She basically shits on him and then is just punches him in the shoulder and is like, anyway, talk to you later. Love you. So a realistic brother-sister relationship, I would almost say.
I remember the orcs invading. Was it Ashenvale? Good old Warsong Gulch, pretty much, right?
Pretty much. I mean, they already discussed that the Warsong Gulch kind of battleground had been going on prior to this. And that's why you'll see some of the stuff happen the way it does in this episode. But the biggest thing for it is that they're beginning to bring in these goblins that are cutting down the trees really fast and stuff like that, as well as soon as they try and send word to Darnassus, their messengers are struck down and attacked. So it hasn't quite hit full-on assault, but things are not looking great for the Night Elfin settlements of Ashenvale. They're pretty isolated at the moment.
Ooh, and I remember we talked about the Beasts of War. Were these the same beasts from Northrend?
Yes.
I know what beasts these are. I'm not gonna spoil it. I figured it out. That's interesting they brought them here, though. I don't personally remember this. I don't know if it's in game.
I don't think that it is. I mean, you'll also see some other stuff that's going to pop up not really in game and from Northrend as well in this episode. So it just seems like that's kind of the trend that they were going with. I'm not against it. The concept to me of being wow, these guys were crazy, pain in my ass while we were out there. We should bring these bad boys home.
Yeah. It's cool to think about. It would have been cooler to see.
Yeah. Well, you do in your mind, your ever-present imagination. But yeah, so that's what's going on there. Highborn have been dying, and they're getting kind of fed up because these Highborn have been questionable if they're going to be inducted back into Night Elven society. Malfurion's kind of not with it. Tyrande's kind of not with it, but they are still questioning if they should, because these ones have fled from Dire Maul after it's been taken over by ogres and stuff, and had this demon dog that was inside of there that got free, which you do see. So, but yes, they have been dying mysteriously somehow, and we're going to get more to the bottom of that now, too. And then, yeah, just the summit with the Alliance where all of the leaders of these different factions, not leaders, but at least emissaries of these different factions have arrived from Theramore, from each of the clans of Ironforge, from the gnomes, and obviously they have Genn himself, who's trying to pitch his way into the Alliance, and they are expecting Varian Wrynn to be arriving sometime.
if he ever comes.
I was gonna say though, the question is still up in the air. Maybe he's still just out on the yacht. Even the concept of imagining Varian relaxing is just like nonsensical to my mind. I don't think we've ever seen a scene where he hasn't been in a position that just like, wow, you look stressed.
Oh, he's relaxing now.
Is that what you're gonna? Anyway, that is what happened in the story last week with us on the podcast, and that is where we come into our comments from last week. Tim, do you have a comment you want to highlight from last week?
Yes, Insulin for the win. I said excited to get into the meat and potatoes of Kata. It's the expansion where I stopped playing until picking it up in Legion. Goated expansion, by the way. So it'll be nice to fill in the lore gaps. Do you guys play the anniversary version of Classic at all? I'm thinking of starting a character because I heard TBC will be released on it sometime next year. And yes, I have a 60 paladin healer that I play, a Night Slayer. Rob, what about you?
I also have a mage on Night Slayer, my 47 mage that I've been really struggling to get up to max, but I promise as soon as they make that TBC announcement, it'll be the kick in the butt that I need to get up there. But I also said that if I somehow manage to get this warrior and hardcore up to max level, I want to transfer it to live servers.
Well, and transferring it would take it to an anniversary server, but it'll just be PvE. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm gonna maybe try that, but that is mostly all the anniversary. I mean, that's all the classic for the most part that I'd be playing. There was a earlier part to that question.
Meat and potatoes.
I think this is kind of like this dead window for myself as well, where I was like coming from Warcraft 3 and stuff like that. You had a lot of Warcraft 3 characters in the first 2 expansions of WoW. So even first getting into the game, while I didn't know like the intricacies of the Sand Lane and the Dark Fallen, the Broken, and so on and so forth, right? They're still major enough stories that I got the general grasp of it. By the time I hit Cataclysm, I was like, what's going on? And then by the time I hit Legion, I was like, I need to learn all the story. This is unacceptable. Shouts out to Nobble for educating a poor soul like myself back in the day. But yeah, I as I have been getting into more of the meat and potatoes of Cataclysm, I'm actually really enjoying the stories of it, and I really like how it's tied into some of the earlier content. So I hope you are just as intrigued as I am as we make our way into this. But I wanted to highlight Ryan Doob over on Spotify saying, okay, I love the Tauren. They are my favorite race, but I will never understand how they became part of the Horde. They seem more like a natural fit amongst the Alliance. They just come off as the peaceful, nature-centric race like the Night Elves. And I agree. I mean, I kind of had like this take back during, I believe it was like episode 33 or something like that, when Garrosh and Bane meet in Thousand Needles to kind of hash out their beef after Garrosh kills Cairn. And Bane is just like, okay, I'm going to join the Horde because, you know, it's like what my father swore an oath to, and I'm going to continue to live by his legacy. Look, man, Garrosh is really lucky that shit happened, because if it was me, I would probably be like, hey, man, you know, our enemies, the ones you want to go to war with right now, they're actually the ones that helped me to take back my home. They provided money, troops, and stuff like that. Sanctuary when I was nearly assassinated. I don't know if I want to hang out with you like that anymore. Obviously, that would have led to another conflict regardless, but it would still, I certainly would have been rubbed the wrong way more than a Tauren, but maybe that's why I'm not the leader that Bane is. Who knows? What do you think?
They're cool, man. I think they're a little too passive, so they don't have as many stories, right? Because they're kind of just doing their own thing, being peaceful. So they're not on the forefront of World of Warcraft, where a lot of war is happening, right? So, and they're too big, man. They're too big. I hate playing one. Like the shoulder pads on those guys. Of your take. They take half your screen. Like playing a warrior with fake shoulder pads. It's too much.
Man. I need to feel like I'm hitting hard too. I don't want to be like some little baby-sized orc.
I'll just hit hard. What it is.
Yeah, no. I mean, the Night Elves, I guess, are inherently peaceful, I would say, but they are at the forefront of a lot of war, as you can see. So, it is, I think, just the storytellers don't really know what to do with them often. I feel like they try and, like, put them in where they can, but they're almost always support characters and stuff like that. So, But thank you for your comment, Ryan, and that is all that we have for your guys' comments for this last week. So let's hop into this latest episode where we make our way into the next portion of the Wolfheart novel. Hey Tim, did you know that Tides of Lore is a Patreon now?
Oh yeah? What do I get if I throw some support on Patreon?
You'll get ad-free episodes, a member shout-out, live stream access, and exclusive VODs, the full package.
So basically, skip the ads, get your name in the show, and help us keep telling Warcraft stories?
Exactly. Join the Tide at patreon.com/tidesoflore. So, we open back up the story where all of the, nearly everyone of the Alliance faction has gathered for Malfurion Stormrage.
Cenarius, guide me to victory.
And Tyrande Whisperwind, as they have hosted this grand banquet meant to create this unity amongst the Alliance, kind of trying to lather them up, butter them up a little bit to get them ready for the proposals that will be coming when everyone is ready and the summit actually happens. And for all accounts, it's actually going pretty well. Even the Dark Iron Dwarves are having a good time. They're even eating food provided by people other than themselves, of course, after their poison tester has tasted it. But, you know, baby steps, right? So, despite this, it's still a fairly tense scene. Like, people are having a good time, but there is that obviously big problem that occurred pretty recently. The Cataclysm, yeah, that tended to affect basically every single race on Azeroth, and they're all kind of talking about, like, you know, I think now that that mountain pass is closed, this is where my border is. And they're like, hell no, that's not where your border is. This is where our border is. And they're talking about how this, you know, resource isn't as available anymore, and this tunnel has collapsed, and there's food and this and that, and it is kind of leading to a little bit of tension amongst everybody. But regardless of this, Malfurion and Tyrande consider this to be a good progression for how the summit is going. And just as Malfurion is like, hey, Tyrande,
draw forth the moon.
Where is Genn at? They see another figure enter. A tall figure begins walking in, and Tyrande's like, oh shit. They actually, I don't know why they tried to do this. Like, this whole story, they constantly bring up how, like, the Night Elves are getting old, right? It just feels really weird, because then, like, after the Cataclysm ends, they're just like, nah, never mind. They're still good. They still got it like that. Because, like, they talk about it like Tyrande is squinting like she can't see so far, like Karen was fucking blind ass was. Regardless, they do eventually recognize this figure, and it's not just because they're a little bit away that they can't see them, but they literally have this radiating, commanding presence that washes over the entire clearing, this glowing sigil at the top of their head, and a serene grace as it draws reverence from all of the dwarves, all of the humans in attendance, all of the elves, as the prophet Velen enters the summit. And as he raises his staff and greets everybody warmly, Tyrande welcomes him and is like, we're honored to have you here. Can we get you anything, big dog? And he's like, just some water. And she's like, okay, cool. Pulls him up a chair, gets him some water, and throws a nice red along with some goose on top of it. And he then does make this declaration to the rest of the Alliance members there, saying that the Draenei would remain on Azeroth permanently, committing their strength to aid the Alliance in its time of need. And the crowd obviously responds with surprise, but it does manage to bolster the mood of the summit. And this is exactly why I got so mixed up. Like, we mentioned, I think, last episode, how our story got a little bit jumbled because we were like, well, this short story should probably be here and this short story should probably be here. This is why I thought the Velen short story should have came first, because, like, that was the whole conflict of it, right? But then we see in the Velen short story that takes place after this, the same conflict. It was weird. So that's where we got the mix up from. That's why I put the Blood of Our Fathers short story with Varian and Anduin where I thought it was supposed to be too, but I goofed. So, alas, the end of the tomfoolery has arrived, and Tim's favorite tomfool has arrived as Genn Greymane.
Victory for Gilneas!
Enters the banquet. Flanked on both sides by his Gilnean escort, he comes with a humble demeanor as he begins apologizing, saying, like, sorry for the delay, and immediately addressing the gathering, telling everyone that he made terrible decisions years ago and that he abandoned the Alliance doing what he thought was right, but that has proven to be a mistake, and he wants to thank everybody for giving him the opportunity at a second chance.
So he wants to come crawling back.
Like the dog he is.
Yeah, he realizes he made some fuck-ups. All right. We're on maybe the start of his redemption arc. We'll see.
Out in the doghouse, Tim said.
Literally, he is a dog.
But yes, his blunt honesty silences the crowd, and for a moment, even the music falters. Tyrande, rising to poise herself and to continue everything without ruining any of the tone, gestures for him to join them, and the tone of happiness begins once again smoothing over the heavy moment. And as the evening begins to settle on, Malfurion observes the settled conversation across all of the tables, Curdrin leading in close to speak with the Archmage from Theramore, Drukon of the Dark Irons exchanging tense words with Geblan Mekator. And to Malfurion's eyes, he even begins to realize that, hey, actually, they're not like yelling at each other. It almost seems like they're kind of, hashing it out like adults. And he begins to think, he's like, this is really the time for either cracks or accountability to be beginning to appear. And that is when this calm, at least for Malfurion and Tyrande, is slightly shattered as two sentinels approach them with their weapons drawn, trying to, get their attention from away from the crowd. And with that, they head over and they find Maiev Shadowsong, who once again has a grim report for them, saying there is another body, as she leads them through the moonlit corridors to a temple chamber where the shrouded form lays on a stone table. Beneath the cloth is Tyrande Whisperwind, one of these high-born emissaries. His throat brutally cut, and pinned to his chest is a blood-stained parchment bearing the chilling words, "Suffer not, traitors." And Maiev is just like, ever the detective, and is like, hey, we can't deny it. This is quite clearly a calculated strike at this point, meant to destabilize the summit and bring problems. So we need to be more on top of this. And as Tyrande kneels before the body, she's like analyzing it, and she's like, you're right. And Maev's like, you should let me lead the investigation. I promise that no one will find these culprits faster. And Tyrande thinks about just how determined Maiev is when she hunts people down. She's like, yeah, that's probably a good call on that one. And just as soon as she says that, Maiev about faces and departs immediately. Watchers are already mobilizing in the shadows as she makes her way amongst them. And meanwhile, Malfurion prepares to deliver the dead body to the Highborn, fully aware of just how tense this will continue to make this situation. But he talks with Tyrande, and he's like, maybe we can take advantage of the fact that Velen's here right now, and we'll break the news to him as soon as we can. And it will, at the very least, having this presence of Velen, having this unity that is currently built in the presence of everybody, maybe we'll be okay. We'll be able to get through this without too many hiccups. But as Malfurion and Tyrande make their way back to the banquet, they do see that Velen's presence literally has already begun to take effect, as they see Drukon and Geblan even kind of having a bit of a laugh with each other. So just staunch contrast to the day before, where they were literally about to fight each other to the death. So he's like, the light sure does work in amazing ways, doesn't it? And that's when another sentinel arrives and has news for Tyrande, announcing that the leader of Stormwind, King Varian Wrynn, has arrived, and he has brought his son Anduin with him. And Tyrande's like, okay. Well, I should go see them. So she begins to head out, and just as she does, before she can leave, Genn Greymane's booming voice rises over the crowd, and he begins to tell the guests of him and the Gilnean's heroics in battle, and the laughter that he has while he's talking about fighting them, and how it takes, a unified front so that none would overcome them. A voice cuts through the crowd in a mocking voice, saying that the Gilneans were probably pleading for mercy so loud that the orcs no doubt turned from the lot of them and ran away in disgust. And as Genn immediately gets angry, exploding in fury, sweeping aside all of his table, and swelling with rage, he yells, "Who dares to spout such a monstrous slur upon me and Gilneas?" And his eyes follow into the direction of the insult, and just as they meet the accuser, he freezes and says, "You," nearly lunging over the table. And the figure says, "And having swayed the orcs so eloquently, you no doubt did as all brave Gildaeans do so well, skulked away and hid until the battle was over." And that is, of course, when King Varian Wrynn
Behold the armies of Stormwind.
turns to Priestess Tyrande and Archdruid Malfurion and says it's a pleasure to see you guys again. The insult lingering on the air like a blade, as Genn is just trembling with this barely restrained fury, shouting like, never have I or any of my warriors act so basically. Like the bravery of Gilneas. Varian cuts him off and he says, your definition of Gilneas is different from what most people tend to think, I would say. And as Genn's followers begin to, get up and be like, oh, you want to talk shit, humping man? Varian's authoritative glare freezes them in place as this clash of kings becomes the centerpiece of this summit's attention. But Malfurion doing what he can to mediate steps between them. And he's like, hey, Varian, we heard that you arrived. How the fuck did you get here so fast? And he's like, yeah, I prefer it that way. And he's like, yeah, that's great. Thanks, Varian. Thanks. You really appreciate you on that one, big dog. But he just, from there on out, ignores Genn entirely as eyes scan the crowd, like surveying a battlefield. And that's when Prince Anduin enters with the royal guard as well, standing in his blue and gold armor, where Varian radiated with a sense of storm and steel. Anduin emanates with a quiet calmness. But Genn, still literally biting down on his tongue, just begins to breathe steadily, trying to dampen the weight of the insults of Varian. And as Malfurion is just like, hey man, like we don't need to be like this. We're here to smooth things out. Varian flatly says that I came to Darnassus for the sake of the Alliance, not for Genn. And that's when Genn steps forward, his voice low and uncharacteristically vulnerable. He admits to his past arrogance, confesses that he made mistakes, and swears that if he is ever able to, he will take an oath of brotherhood to Stormwind and to the Alliance, promising that Gilneas would be unwavering in its loyalty moving forward. And Tim, how does Varian react to this?
Logically, of course. No, he probably smacks a bitch.
Kind of. Fully restrained physically, he still snaps back at him, saying that Stormwind wants no such brothers. We've done without you, without Gilneas, without the Worgen, and we will continue to do so. If what you want is redemption, you will not get it from me. As he turns and he strides away with his entourage, leaving the banquet, and as Genn stands there trembling, he's almost shifting into his Worgen form, his body swelling as his teeth begin baring. He manages to control himself, offering an apology to Malfurion before leading his Gilneans off into the forest. As the banquet's music, Tyrande's like, come on, band members, keep playing. I know that was weird, but keep playing. The efforts to revive the festivities are a failure, and there is still this heavy air that is just over the banquet and all of the Alliance leaders now. Good job, Varian. You really brought everyone together.
I mean, he does so well with Anduin, right?
Yeah. What can I say?
I mean, it kind of just shows the kind of person he is.
More like Garrosh than he thinks sometimes.
Honestly, he's just the human Garrosh. Yeah.
But nearby, Anduin lingers along, talking with Velen. And he's like, hey, Velen, I started doing the light out in Ironforge, and I gotta say, that light stuff ain't no high like it, brother. And Velen's like, I know, man. I know, for real. And he's just like, is there, do you think that I have a potential with the light? And he's like, dude, I have no doubt that you have this aura to you, brother. The light is radiant with you, my guy. You should pursue the light more. And Anduin's like, I think I should. I think maybe I should pursue the light more. As these two guards quickly run up on him, flushed and scalding. They're like, you bitch, Anduin, come on, bro. You know your dad's gonna whoop the fuck out of us if you don't leave with him. Come on. And at first, Anduin's frustrated, but he gains his composure, and he's just like, all right, I will be on my way then. So him and Velen depart, and with this banquet ends in this uneasy silence. And how close those kings had come to violence really shows that the fractures of the Alliance go deeper than even Malfurion and Tyrande could have imagined, and the danger that Varian's disdain posed could be more catastrophic than they even realized. But later that night, Varian is within his quarters, and in the serene elegance of Darnassus, but it's unsettling to him. He finds it almost claustrophobic compared to the large halls of the Stormwind Keep. He says that he finds it weird, a society that builds itself around nature instead of building nature into itself like most humans and stuff like that too, which I think is just an interesting little concept for how they talk about the night elves. But he's just like, I gotta get out of this fucking these quarters. I'm being choked out here. So he begins to walk out into the forest, and he's making his way through this moonlit canopy when he's intercepted, and he turns and he's like, Malfurion, and he acknowledges him curtly, and the archdruid is just like, hey, I'm keeping a buck with you, man. The banquet, honestly, I'm not mad about that. Your confrontation with Genn, bro, really? And Varian is just like, hey, I actually don't really want to talk about Genn right now. You know, in light of the cataclysm and all the shit that's going on, I have bigger problems than that. And Malfurion is just like, you know, look, I understand that he's done bad things. I understand your frustration. But I need you to be the leader that the Alliance needs right now, and I need you to give the Worgen a fair chance. And after a long silence, he relents, and he gives his word to Malfurion, saying, I will give Genn and the Worgen fair consideration. And Malfurion's like, cool, man, good enough, that's all that I ask. But before they can even continue their conversation any further, a highborn mage, Varden, approaches, and Varian immediately recognizes his type. Arrogant, ancient, and dangerous. And seizes upon the interruption to be like, alright, so I'll excuse myself, have a good time, Malfurion, bye. But mutters bitterly about the lurking Worgen in the shadows as he briefly scans the tree line, making his way into the night, his entourage trailing behind. And now, left alone with Varden, this highborn Malfurion's like, hey, another one of you dudes died. And the mage's expression remains completely composed, but he clenches his fist, and he's like, we want that body. And he's like, yep, sounds good, you'll get the body. Maiev is currently leading the investigation, but I want you guys to keep a distance. Maiev has requested that you guys keep a distance for now while she tries to figure that out. And it stirs unease and harshness in Varden, who he's just like, I know that woman hates us too, what the fuck? But he does reveal more dark news as he's like, you know, that's shitty. I didn't actually even come to speak with you about that. Another one of our people has gone missing. And the chill seems to just weigh down upon everyone present. And as Malfurion thinks about it, he's like, dang, we literally have a serial killer in Darnassus. And it is a pattern calculated in disruption. But that is where we do cut far from Darnassus. You have Commander Haldrissa in Ashenvale, moving with a brisk precision. She's having a funeral for Xanon, her second-in-command, who is alongside of her. And it is brief and somber, but with that, her mind already snaps back to a new strategy as she begins planning to figure out what exactly the Horde is doing, and at least hoping that her word reached Darnassus. So she calls up her second-in-command, and she's like, hey, second-in-command, I need you to get more scouts ready or more messengers ready. I want you to just basically load up all the hippogriffs that we can and just send them out, because I don't think that last message got through. The fact that they haven't responded is weird. And she's like, all right, cool. So as soon as these riders take off, Haldrissa is given the pouch that the previous messenger had been carrying on them. And looking at that, they're like, oh, shit. She would have sooner died than given up this pouch to anybody. Our riders need to come back. Something's wrong. So she runs, and just as she's like, quick, blow that horn, get their attention. They blow the horn. They get these riders' attention. As they turn to go back and land at their leader, the ambush strikes. And one scout after another is struck, arrow after arrow piercing the hippogriffs as they begin spiraling downwards, crashing in a spray of feathers, broken wings, and blood. And moments later, riddled with arrows, more of the riders fall. Panic ripples through the sentinels and the encampment as it becomes clear that the Horde had marked the skies, and it is a trap for anyone to try and flee through the air. As Haldrissa, second-in-command, calls for them to form ranks, shields locked, archers knocked, glaives gleaming, the flickering light of campfires as the first wave of orcish arrows rain down into their defenses, as screams echoes, more of these sentinels falling from the ramparts as Haldrissa makes her way up to the top, where she ducks an arrow shaft that whistles right past her cheek. Drawing her bow, she begins firing into the dense tree line. She catches glimpses of the orc shadows moving with deliberate precision, knowing that this is no reckless raid, this is a calculated assault, and she immediately calls for a counter volley as the sentinels respond with deadly accuracy, their arrows hissing through the night, felling several of these lurking shapes, but the orcs simply melt back into the cover of the tree line, and then a dreadful silence falls. Smoke beginning to rise in the distance as 2 columns of black smoke rise to the east against the starlit sky as she realizes that their other outposts are burning, and she understands the scale of the assault, that the Horde had stroked multiple targets across Ashenvale simultaneously, that this is not an isolated skirmish. This is the beginning of war. So she's like, hey guys, mount up on those night sabers, get your lances ready to battle, basically, right? She has them go to the south gate, get ready. They start sounding the drums of war on the opposite side of the tree line. But just as that begins to happen, they look up and they recognize a new threat descending from the sky as the dark specks grow rapidly as they gain closer and closer to winged shapes that almost look like a dragon, but like not quite a dragon, as orcs riding red proto-dragons, their riders hunched low, begin making their way towards Haldrissa and her sentinels. And with that, she's like, how many hippogriffs we still got left? And they're like, I don't know, we got like 6 of them. She's like, we're gonna need to at least go and try and dogfight with them, so get up there. They hop on their hippogriffs, they fly up into the air, and the proto-drakes and the hippogriffs collide midair. And tearing through this night sky, one of these sentinels hippogriffs rakes across this dragon's muzzles with its talons, sending the orc rider tumbling to his death below, as another one of these scouts lets go a perfectly timed arrow, splitting another one of these proto-drake rider's throats as his body begins falling end over end. And for that moment, the hope flared amongst the sentinels until it dies, right? The proto-drakes attack in coordinated packs, and there are more of them than there are of the hippogriffs. As they begin savagely attacking in pairs, the hippogriffs do all they can to slash and fight as they rip into another one of these proto-dragons' bellies, blood raining down from the sky onto the canopy below, as the rider then finding themselves getting their arm lopped off by a orc's axe before the next one ends her life, sending her falling to the ground below. On another battle, you have 2 proto-dragons ripping at one hippogriff, where the hippogriff strikes so deep into one of the proto-drake's bodies that they all just get tangled up and fall into a death spiral, killing all 3 and their riders. As Haldrissa watches just in horror this aerial battle raging beyond her reach, desperately hoping that she could help, but knowing that their arrows would not turn the tide. For 4 brutal minutes, the sky burns with feathers, scales, and screams before the defenders die one by one.
Are these Dragon Maw orcs?
They shouldn't be. Dragon Maw orcs are like the old, like the Dark Horde, technically.
Okay.
They're
orcs with dragons.
This is what I was talking about, where Garrosh was just like, damn, you guys would make good weapons of war. I'll be honest, I was surprised he struggled so much to get those beasts of war, but I don't know how he got these dragons.
Right, yeah. I remember Galakron, not Galakron, but you know the one with the one with tattoos and like huge tusks almost.
But I feel like this sort of scene really builds on that idea where it's like, oh yeah, Garrosh would be the kind of person to just like get any beast, get any weapon, and try and use it against his enemies, right?
Maybe. I don't know. He hates other races, but I guess he's cool with beasts.
Well, I mean, if the Darkspear would happily run into their death every time, I'm sure Garrosh would willingly use it until he ran out. But yes, just as swiftly as the proto-drakes had come, they vanish into the crowds. As all these sentinels stand tense, the arrows finally stop raining down upon them as their eyes stay fixed on the tree line, waiting for the next horde attack to come, until no horns, no war cries, just silence.
Hey, you know how you're always telling people to listen to Tides of Lore?
Of course, I am my own biggest fan.
Well, now it's even easier. We're on Apple Podcasts, Audible, Castbox, Spotify, and YouTube.
So I can tell them, wherever you listen, that they can just hit subscribe or follow?
Exactly. No matter where you are, Azeroth Stories will find you.
And that's where we cut to Darnassus. This night settling into a deceptive calm in the temple gardens. You have Velen sitting cross-legged beneath the starlight, meditating alone, as Anduin Wrynn begins to approach him. And he's like, hey, I'm going to keep it a buck with you, Velen. My dad is a certified shithead, and he's a pain in my ass, and can I stay with you, Uncle Velen? And Velen's like, you want to pursue the path of priesthood like that? And he's like, yeah, I think it's the right path. And he's like, it's not going to be easy. Like, it's, you may think that the light is all sunshine and rainbows, but it's a bit more of a challenge than that. And Anduin's like, I understand that, but let me tell you, when I felt it, there was no high like it, brother. And he's like, I understand. I'll take you with me, big dog. But elsewhere in Darnassus, you have Maiev Shadowsong wandering the forest path near his quarters, unable to sleep as his wife's voice lingers in his thought, a gentle reminder from her to step forward and rejoin life, even as this grief clings to him like a second skin, the ancient boughs of this city, granting him this unusual solace until it reminds him just how much time had passed since he had truly belonged here. Though his reverie is shattered when his boot is caught on something soft, and his instincts from the War of the Ancients immediately kick in as he looks down and he's like, another dead body.
Hey, you want to see a dead body?
Yeah, exactly. Garb is unmistakable. Even in the gloom, he recognizes them from all those years ago. A highborn, as two deep slashes cut across the mage's throat and a note fluttered faintly on its chest, pinned in the same grim fashion as the first victim. His eyes scan around looking. He sees a blood spatter that had been carefully masked, tracks brushed away, and he thinks the kill hadn't happened here. The body had been dragged to this location, a calculated move to mislead investigators. And Jared is like, is this my job anymore? Do I have any stake in this matter? And he's like, hey, Darnassus is during this fragile summit. I mean, maybe I should. He's like, okay, I'll at the very least go inform the temple. So as he's going to the Temple of Alone, he encounters Chandra's Feathermoon and her sentinels. And he's like, hey, and bad news, another dead body, another highborn. Her eyes instantly go into that military leader, and she snaps out orders at all around her, ordering a message to Maiev and guards to secure the scene. Jared himself staying with her in her company as they make their way towards Tyrande. As the temple quickly filled with leaders, Malfurion arrives alongside Varian, the highborn representative, whose indignation simmered just below his polished exterior. Tyrande confirming the dead mage's identity as Hasrim, another highborn, and acknowledged that Jared had been the one to discover it. As Varian has said that he's had enough, and he's like, we'll not just sit by here and wait for you guys to kill all of us. As he hiss this threat almost to everyone, saying that he's going to make these murders public to everybody at the summit, and they will see what they have to, and they'll see what they have to say about it then. And his gaze then turns to Jared, and he's like, so you're the one who found that body, Curious, is it? And Jared instantly snaps back into that leader mode, taking no bullshit from him. He says, I did find it. If you suggest otherwise, you'll regret it. And Malfurion is just like, all right, guys, let's calm down. Let's simmer down a little bit, brothers. More highborn are dead. This city is turning into a nest of suspects. We need to figure this out, and we can't be at each other's throat if we want to do that. So with these tensions high, Tyrande turns to Jared and is like, Maev's leading the investigation. I think you should help her, though. So if you are willing, this is not an order, if you are willing to go and assist your sister, I think that you should. And he's like, I'll do it, but she's in charge. And she's like, cool, I'm sure Maiev would have it no other way. So they depart as Chandris accompanies him partway, but afterward her voice pragmatic but edged with hope says that your sister is formidable, but narrow. She'll need someone who can see beyond just the hunt. And Jared's like, yeah, well, I was always kind of the more level-headed out of us, so hopefully that's how this goes. And Jared tracks Maev's to the Watcher's training ground. Shocker, where else would they be? He sees one of the courtyards completely silenced until he encounters Neva, which was Maev's second in command, and informed him of Jared's arrival. And waiting like a lightsaber in the tall grass, and she begins circling him with this cold scrutiny, being like, expected more scars. And he's like, that's crazy, I didn't ask. Anyway, where's Maiev? She's like, she was here. The highborn came to collect their dead before she was finished with it, so she followed them back to their camp. And Jared's like, all right. But that's when something shifts in the tree line, a shadowy figure moving swiftly and deliberately, slipping between the trees, and his instincts immediately take over as he plunges into the woods after the shape, his senses sharpened by years of war. As he rounds a trunk at full speed, Agony explodes through him. A magical snare activates and lightning arcs through his body. Every muscle in his body violently locks. Every nerve is set ablaze. The scream that tears from his throat is raw, unrestrained, and echoes through the quiet night. And the magical snare held him upright, ensuring that every single part of his body could feel it and felt the full force of the assault. He could not move, he could not fall, and all he could think about is memories of Chalicer's warmth, trying to keep him anchored, trying to keep his mind from shattering from the pain, when abruptly the magic ceases and he collapses to the forest floor, a hand seizing his arm, firm, saying, "I didn't know." And the unfamiliar male voice whispered, "I didn't realize that it was there." But before he could focus, through, his eyes nearly popping out of his skull and the tears flowing down his face, the stranger tensed, hearing sounds in the distance, and a heartbeat later, he vanishes back into the shadows. As Jared's vision blurs into tears, Neva approaches light and quick, another presence following, colder, sharper, unmistakable, saying, "Of course he lives, he's my brother." And Maiev Shadowsong stands over him, looking like a blade in the dark, her eyes burning into him, which is where we arrive in Bilgewater Harbor over in Ajara. The Horde have finally brought their beasts of burden and landed on the shores of Kalimdor and are preparing to take them off of their ships and get them over to Ashenvale, or at the very least, present them to whoever's going to come pick them up. As Bryln looks across Bilgewater Harbor, he thinks about how this is no longer the modest outpost that it had once been, but that the goblins had swarmed the docks like an ants of industry, sawtooth machines rattling, belching fumes, and loading cargo and refitting warships, cranes swinging overhead and lowering supplies, all the chaotic energy of the Horde's war machine at full tilt, crackling through the air. No longer just a trade hub, now a militarized port, churning with purpose. As the cages come off the ships hold doors swing open, massive iron-bound cages, each shrouded in heavy tarps, rolling onto the docks, the gaunt crew worn by weeks of vigilance. Some of the goblins laugh at first, but then one look from Bryln looming over them, and they're like, "Anything we can help you with?" And he's like, "Help with the cages, or you're going to be fed to the cargo." And they're like, "Okay, thanks, bye."
Those are brutal, man.
Oh yeah, they don't fuck around, dude. And before the final cages were secure, a boat from the mainland approaches Korkron, Garrosh's elite enforcers, and Bryln squares his shoulders as he recognized that none other than Garrosh Hellscream himself had come to meet the shipment. As he recognized that dust still clings to the war chief's armor from the hard ride, he's like, "Damn." But as he steps onto the docks, the air shifts and sets the stage for this just presence that Garrosh is becoming. The orcs and goblins all salute without being told. Garrosh not even demanding loyalty at this point, commanding it with his presence. As he looks, counts the cages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And he asks, 8? And Bryln's like, "Yeah, there were supposed to be more, but they got lost in the storm." And Tim, how does Garrosh respond to this?
I have no.
Because he's surprisingly chill about it.
Really?
He's surprisingly chill about it. Yep, he's just like, "Show them to me." And they pull back the tarp on the nearest cage, revealing the hulking creature, and it lunges at the bars, the iron creaking under its weight. The orcish guards begin bracing their spears as the other cagers begin rattling with snarls and fury as well. As Garrosh steps closer, he says, his eyes fixed on the staring beast, saying they'll remember their purpose. And with a signal to the Korkron, a nearby longhouse door opens, and the high-pitched cries of younglings of these creatures echoes across the harbor, and instantly the adults fall silent, their snarls replaced by a tense, intelligent stillness. Garrosh nodded satisfied, saying they understood their young live, and they will honor their pact.
Wow, good guy.
As Bryln confesses, he's like, "Yeah, we lost a ton of dudes getting these bad boys over here." And he's like, "This isn't for, I don't want you to pity them. I just want you to understand this is the weight of war, brother. A great price," he declared. "One that will break Ashenvale." As the Garrosh's voice says that their deaths will be repaid in victory, that their names will be spoken with pride when the forest falls. As cheers erupted from the orcs and goblins alike, even Bryln, who had half expected execution, felt his chest swell with pride, as his survival would not be met with scorn, but with purpose. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not killing you. You're coming to war, brother. Congrats, you've been drafted." And he's like, "Oh, thank you, war chief. I should say that Bryln is the most Garrosh Glazer the character I've ever encountered in the story. He is just like, yes, Garrosh, anything you say, as long as I can be your mount to get there, Garrosh.
I mean, he's probably scared of him, dude.
Sure, yep. But yes, he says it like it is the greatest honor of his life to be able to die in the honor of Garrosh Hellscream, that he'll slay 100 night elves before they take him down. And Garrosh just replies, fight well then. As the dawn's first light begins creeping over the harbor, they begin taking their cages, rumbling them towards Ashenvale, preparing for a war that none of the night elves could be prepared for. And this is where the official summit in Darnassus begins. The Gilneans enter, as all of these alliance members have already found themselves seated, but they don't enter in their regular ass forms. They enter as Worgen. And it's unsettling to some, but they want people to see. They want people to see the ferocity. They want people to see the power reflecting in the Worgen. And as they enter, Genn simply says, Gilneas stands before you. As he declares this, he drives the banner of Gilneas into the land. And he says, to atone for its sins, to offer its might to all in need, that no truer brother will there be. And the declaration carries through the grove like a challenge and a vow. And as Malfurion's gaze crosses over them, they nodded, knowing that this was their moment. Malfurion stepping forward, his voice carrying like the wind, he recounts the history of the Worgen, being like, hey man, I accidentally made the Worgen when I was fucking around with that pact form, and you know, none of this shit really would have happened if it wasn't for me, so maybe we should cut the Worgen just a little bit of slack. There's no way that they could have known, but at the very least, they've done what we didn't even know how to do, and they've managed to control this. So, they are no longer these beasts of legend. They are warriors of the Alliance. And everyone's like, yeah! Kurdrin Wildhammer rises up with a grin, saying, the Wildhammer welcomes the strength of the Worgen. Yee yee. And applause and cheers begin to ripple through the grove, dwarves thumping their hammers, voices booming like distant thunder, and Tyrande calls for a vote. She's like, anyone who wants them in the Alliance, say aye. And ayes echo across the entire courtyard like a war drum. Basically every member of the Alliance, aye. Who wouldn't want this fucking werewolf ripping through my enemies? And that's when the eyes fall on Varian Wrynn, who is standing silent. Silence falls across the summit. And he's like, sorry, I actually meant to speak up a little bit sooner. And he begins like kind of pondering the situation, analyzing the Gilneans in front of them. And the Worgen, thinking about the potential, the strategic power that they would provide. He's like, the Worgen do offer us a hunger that the Horde thrives on, a hunger that could strengthen us. As Genn's eyes begin to widen, Varian goes on, just being like, we could use the strength to finally meet them at their level of violence, and it might be just what we need. But that's when Varian's tone darkens as he turns his gaze onto Genn and says that he would still, despite that, never give consent to allow these mongrels into the Alliance. And as he does that, he spits and says that honor and trust, that's what they need. And that the Gilneans have never shown to have either. That they abandoned them once before. Why should we ever trust you again? As gasps ripple through the crowd, Edrig, Genn second in command, begins to lunge forward in rage, but Genn just holds up one hand, holding him back, and a control of iron despite the insult. And the moment shattered the rising hope of the summon as Varian's words cut deeper than any blade could, and with a snap of his fingers, Varian once again is like, and it's time to do the thing where I leave, and he leaves. It's time to say the really fucked up thing and leave. You know that thing I do? Anduin, where you at? But as this happens, the ceremony dissolves into uproar, delegates shouting at one another over the tenuous unity that is beginning to fracture under the weight of all these old wounds. As, you know, the dwarfs obviously start talking about some problem that they had 150 fucking years ago, and all of this happens. And above it all, Genn's howl rises into the night, a sound that swings between promise and warning as it echoes through the ancient boughs of Darnassus. And in the aftermath of Varian's outburst, the summit plunged into chaos. A thunderclap splits all of the debate going on, followed by a single bolt of lightning that strikes before Malfurion Stormrage, silencing the entire assembly, his voice booming like the wind through entire canyons. He says, you know my feelings on the situation, and I can assure you that this is not over. As Malfurion's gaze sweeps over the assembly, he meets everyone with doubt and anger and confusion, but then as he looks for Genn Greymane, he finds that he is already gone. And looking to restore some semblance of order, he just says, "This summit is adjourned. We will meet again the following day." As Kurdrin's just like, as long as you bring more ale and food.
That's all you need, man.
Hey, man, Kurdrin knows what he wants. He's a simple man.
I do like dwarves in that aspect.
I like the Wildhammers a lot, actually, when I think about them. They're kind of cool.
Yeah.
They're like a nice blend between like warriors and shamans.
Well, dwarves can be shamans
dwarfs
and warriors.
Yep. But after the summit disperses, Malfurion sends a message to Tyrande being like, "Hey, yeah, I need to talk with Varian. He exploded at everybody." Lingering as he begins thinking about how Tyrande was so set that Varian was the linchpin for keeping the Alliance unified, but the King's obstinacy through everything has threatened to unravel the entire Alliance as a whole. He sets off to confront the Lion of Stormwind. And that's where we cut to Varian and Anduin talking with each other, as Anduin tells his father that the light isn't just a tool. And Varian snaps back at him, "Yes, it is, you dumbass." As Varian's heart pounds in his chest, this duty, this sense of duty, legacy, the throne itself weighing on him, begins to make him more and more anxious. But as he looks over at Anduin, he sees him only growing calmer, more resolved. And that's when the boy is like, "Hey, I'm gonna go stay with Uncle Velen until you solve your shit out, Dad. I'm gonna be the greatest priest that ever done lived, so I'll see you later." And he goes to Yui out of there. And as he's leaving, Varian's like, "We're not done talking." And he's like, "I think we're done talking." And Varian lunges forward, grabbing Anduin's arm as tightly as he can. And Anduin cries out in pain. Varian, realizing in that instance what he did, crushing his son's arm, is already beginning to welt up. They say that Varian can and has already choked out multiple enemies with one hand on his own. So yeah, maybe using that dad strength on your fucking 13-year-old isn't the best play, Varian. As he realizes what's going on, he releases Anduin immediately, trying to apologize, but the damage is done, not only to the flesh, but to this bond between father and son, as he says, "I'm going with Velen." And he says, "We'll depart at sunrise." And as Varian tries to argue that Archbishop Benedictus back in Stormwind could teach him the exact same path, and it could be, just as good, Anduin pulls the Varian classic and is just like, "Nah, I'm all right." Flips the Yui and just returns a sad smile on his way out, saying, "Thank you." And Varian swears on Tiffin's memory that he would never harm his son again, as he thinks that the last thing that he might ever see in his son's eyes was the shadow of fear. And Anduin meets up with Velen. He's like, "Hey, yeah, my dad said I could go. It's cool." And he's like, "Yeah, is that why your arm's all bruised?" And he's like, "Oh, I fell into a doorknob." And he's like, yeah. Anyway, uses the light to heal Anduin's arm, and he's like, very nice. Yeah, see, this is why I need to be a priest. As he's just like, "But yeah, no, for realsies, I am coming with you." And he's just like, "Well, I can see that the light touches you deeply. Very well. I'm down with it. Let's do it." As you then cut to Malfurion returning to the Temple of Elune at a swift pace, his frustration with Varian's stubbornness now joined with the dread of ill news. A sentinel had summoned Tyrande away from the summit, something that would not have happened unless the situation was absolutely dire, and he already suspected where he thought this could be coming from: Ashenvale. Perhaps some sort of incursion, maybe some development in the Highborn murders. Who knows? Preparing himself for any possibility, this peace in Darnassus is anything but that for him. As he enters a chamber where Shalissar's body had once been lain, the soft prayers of the priestesses echo across the stone. Tyrande stands amidst the faithful, bathed in Elune's light, and laying on the platform is the broken body of a sentinel courier. As Tyrande's like, "This is Aradria Cloudfire," which, just to remind everyone, this is the very first scout that they sent off that fell on her glaive, and they're basically like, they took her pack and thought that she was dead, but I guess she just fell unconscious and then got up and kept it going. So respect. 1 HP'd it all the way. But as he looks over her body, he sees her pale, bloodless skin, this brutal scar that's racked across her chest, and seeing it strikes Malfurion like a blow, knowing that whatever message she had carried this far had been brought through blood and fire. And this druid that had been sent to Ashenvale explains, he's like, "Yeah, I know you sent me to Ashenvale, but apparently she fell on her own glaive while fighting several orcs. She killed a few of them too before she fell." As she actually stirs into consciousness, her voice rasps, stated that She was carrying a missive from Commander Haldrissa as the courier begins coughing violently, blood flecking down Tyrande's gown, and just says, I prayed to her. I prayed to the Mother Moon, and I promised her that if she let me live long enough to deliver the message, that I would gladly give my life to her after. And the druid mentions, he's like, yeah, I found her west of the outpost, guided by the forest whispers itself, and her body laid amongst 4 orcs at least, along with her hippogriff, and she was the one that actually insisted on continuing. And so I healed her as I could, and then flew her here using my Stormcrow form when I could. And despite Tyrande's plead for her to rest, the courier pushed on that the message was dire. The horde had slipped behind the lines. They're advancing deep into Ashenvale, and the scale of their assault is more than alarming. This is no mere raid. This is a full-on war. And after that, she exhales her final breath as Tyrande gently places her hand over the woman's chest, saying that she is no more, that Elune has received her, and she says that she prayed for this. As Chandris enters with her weapon drawn, she kneels beside the fallen courier, her voice carrying both grief and command. She says, it's up to us then to ensure that her sacrifice is not in vain. She was one of mine, a skilled rider. Haldrissa chose well. And Tyrande's like, all right, let's get this body on out of here, vowing that her name would be sung through the temple to honor her this day. And Malfurion asks, he's like, hey, the other druid that was with Haldrissa, Carden, have you seen him? And he's like, I tried using the force. He literally says, I tried to reach him mind to mind during the flight, but I could not. Something blocked me. Yeah, that something was probably 20 pounds of steel embedded into the boy's chest. As Malfurion's just like, okay, tell the general everything that you know, and then rest. You've done well. The weight of responsibility shifting now that her message had been received, and the implications for Ashenvale are grave. Tyrande, turning to face Malfurion, her eyes fierce beneath the temple moonlight, says, I was told what Varian did. I was stunned. Did you speak with him? And Malfurion's like, I did. And Tyrande's like, and he's like, he's not going to lead us right now. He's kind of being a little bitch about it. And Tyrande is just like, but Elune foresaw this. Varian must be the one to guide us in this dark hour. And her voice is like both a prayer and one of conviction, believing that the vision is as real as the flesh and blood standing before her now. Even as the Lion of Stormwind seems to be faltering, Malfurion's expression softens with sorrow as he says that he cannot even guide himself with his son. I overheard them. The boy is young, but his spirit is old. Varian is losing him. And Tyrande claps his hand, resolute, saying, then we must find a way to reach him. And Malfurion is like, I actually think I have an idea of how to do that. A way to make him come face to face with his past. Like, maybe he'd be down for a hunt. Remind him of who he is and perhaps who he can become. A spark, if you will. But with that, with his resolution, as he begins to make his way to go and seek out Varian, drowning in turmoil after the argument with his son, that is where we are going to leave off today's episode and where we will pick up next week. Do you have any questions or comments for this episode? Because I got one for you.
Varian doesn't know how to deal with his fucking emotions, bro. Every single story, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not as like rash as like a Garrosh, but it is very Garrosh-like, right? Like, it's not unreasonable to say it's like you explode and cause problems in a very similar fashion, even if maybe you can reflect on it later and regret it, like something that Garrosh can't really do. It's still a very similar thing. I'm curious, do you have any theories about who might be killing all these Highborn?
Let me hear yours, and I'll think while I hear yours.
I mean, I've read most of the novels, so I can't really do it, but that's why I'm curious, because it was not necessarily someone I was expecting, but maybe I'm just dumb.
I'm trying to think of who would be killing Highborns in this era, but I don't have any assumptions right now.
Alrighty, well, that's the question I'm going to leave for you guys then, too. If you have not read this novel or you don't know this story, let us know who your guess is. Who do you think is killing all these Highborns? I mean, a lot of people have problems with the Highborn. You've even heard it last time that the Worgen don't really trust the Highborn just for the sake of what they've heard about them alone. So I guess we'll see where this could go. Let us know what you think down there. If you did make it this far in the episode, thank you so much. It really means the world to us. If you're on YouTube, a like, a comment, a subscribe would truly make my entire day, week, month. Over on Spotify or any of the Apple Podcasts, anything like that, 5 stars and a follow would really be greatly appreciated. And if you are just basking in our content and love it so much, you should check out our Patreon. We got ad-free episodes. We have our weekly recap, like I said, that we've been doing, which you can even join for free, as well as live stream VODs and all sorts of stuff that we're getting up to over there that we're going to continue to expand. So if you are interested, check that out, patreon.com/tidesoflore. But that is all that we have for you guys this week, and we will check in with you guys next week. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Your guys' support truly means the world to us. If you're interested in hearing more, we have our full show on YouTube and Spotify, new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I also want to take this moment to give a special thank you to Fantasy Lo-Fi for providing the music for this episode. You can find them on YouTube at Fantasy Lo-Fi or on Spotify under Bits and Hits. Be sure to show them some love, as their music does truly bring this journey to life. Once again, thank you for joining us on Tides of Lore, and we will see you next week.